Hey, you. Welcome to Bonehead.
Joe, do you think you could tell heaven from hell? Blue skies.
From rain?
Yeah. Something, walk on in and play. I don't know. I didn't pull up
Do
the
you
lyrics.
think you could tell?
I'm trying to think of the theme song to Highway to Heaven, and I'm blanking on it.
I don't know.
In my mind, machine. She kept her motor clean.
I was in my mind. It's literally
woman I'd ever seen. She had the exactly size and kind of
in my mind. The theme to Highway to Heaven is literally just an edited version of an AC/DC song.
Well, see, when I think of Highway to Heaven, I'm playing. You know what I'm playing in my head? The ending song to The Incredible Hulk, and I'm like, that's not it.
You know what I'm thinking of? James has those knocking me out with those American thighs.
I do. I've been.
We could have sang Highway to Hell, but no. Gentlemen, this was hard to explain to our audience what we're about to do, but we're about to do about the afterlife.
So this will be the first of two parts. We'll
Ghostbusters Afterlife.
So this came out because we talked about Soul, because I got Soul, but I ain't a soldier. But we talked about
and I'm not a Soul man because that movie is very racist.
How dare you?
However, the Dan Aykroyd show.
He's from the hip with Judd. I almost said Judd Hirsch. That'd be a different from the hip. Sorry. Obscure 80s.
I was saying Soul Man and think Dan Aykroyd because of the sitcom. Well, I mean, in all honesty, guess which one of those is more acceptable to watch in modern day America? Dan Aykroyd. And he's Canadian.
Let him in. He'll
allegedly
here with him.
So Soul got us talking, and when we talked about Soul for our best of 2020, one of the things that we talked about is depictions of the afterlife. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk, and we're going to do this episode talking about depictions of heaven or at least the positive afterlife.
Yeah.
And so it's not all
semi-positive. I don't have hell because we're going to do the next one over hell. But mine, I didn't find. I had a tough time with this one.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where we're not doing, and for this one we're not each doing a top three. This is a general discussion of heaven and how it's portrayed in movies and television, and probably James will bring up literature and obscure Roman text.
It is called literature.
Book learning.
Yeah. You can't not read,
but married nothing, not nobody.
But one of those things but I still put together a list of movies that I thought did the best portrayal of heaven and the afterlife, and I would be damned if none of mine aren't obscure. I'm like, they're on every list.
Well, yeah, because I don't think there's a ton of them. I since I had the hardest time, you guys want me to go first as far as what I was trying to figure out about what I think is heaven and what movie represents it. There was really only one movie that deals with it, and it isn't necessarily heaven, so I'm glad we're saying afterlife, but it isn't hell either. And it's one of my favorite Albert Brooks films, which is Defending Your Life.
Your Life. That was my number one as well.
Holy shit, Chad. I actually left another one because I thought it would be yours.
The other one. I was struggling.
Richard wrote the book of your other one.
Oh, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know who wrote the book.
Did the star commit suicide?
Yeah. Then yeah.
It
was a struggle. Those are the top two for me.
Defending Your Life is one of my favorites because it's
amazing.
Okay, and a lot of people like Missing in America or whatever it's called, and it's not bad, and that's with him and Julie. It's not Newmar. It's I can't.
Haggerty.
Julie Haggerty. Thank you, Chad.
You're welcome.
It has Rip Torn in it. It has Meryl Streep. It's written and directed by Albert Brooks. And basically, Afterlife is you defending your life. It's not a hell. It's not necessarily a punishment. But before you can move on to hell, Chad, and correct me anytime, you have to go into a court and prove, did you make the most or try to make the most of your life?
Well, and it's not hell. You have two options. You
have to go back.
Defending your life. In this one, it's how smart are you? Right. That's all it is. It's how smart are you? And it's based on the decisions you've made, on how fearful you were in your life.
You think it's mistakes? Smart, really? I don't know that I think it's smart. I mean, all the people that are helping him are smarter than him because they use more of their IQ.
If I remember, the plot is you have to reach a certain level of smartness to move on to the next level.
I think it's fear. I
Oh,
think
so
it's
it's like
living
Maze
your
Runner.
life to the most. So
Yeah, and that's what. Yeah, but they kept calling it being smarter. But yeah, it's not being afraid in life, and you're defending it, and you have one of options. You either move on to the next level, or you repeat yourself and start again.
well, here's the
And one of the best parts for the movie was Rip Torn going, "You never want to meet. There are people who've done this 100 times. You don't want to talk to them."
while there, one must prove in courtroom style process that he successfully overcame his fears.
Okay, then yeah.
Move to the next stage of existence.
Okay.
It's an interesting picture. It's actually, I don't know that it's Meryl Streep's best role. I don't think that by even a long shot.
No, because she's in it, but she doesn't have a whole lot in it.
Doesn't have a lot. She's the love interest. They meet at a nightclub. It has a lot of inside jokes. It's got references to other movies. I really thought I'd be the only one bringing this one up.
No, I
should
love
have known better. I should have known better.
And I love Albert Brooks.
Well, I like Albert Brooks. I love him in a few things. Broadcast news. Anyway, so I just like the idea of it. And there's some great scenes. There's one scene where you can go into the hall of your past lives. I don't remember the name of it. Chad, do you remember this scene?
Yeah, I know the scene you're talking about. Yeah.
And then so he meets this girl played by Meryl Streep. Her trial for the next existence is going great. They're having a good time. His it isn't going so well. Does that make sense? They show all the things that he's done wrong, that he's screwed up, that he's been scared of, that he hasn't got past his fear to be able to live his life. And he goes into this where you can watch your afterlife, and they come out at the end of it. Meryl Streep, well, I got to do this, and I was there, and basically he was like a warrior, an African warrior running from a lion.
Yeah, so Meryl Streep.
That was it.
Yeah, so Meryl Streep was Prince Valiant.
Oh, was that what it was?
It was Prince Valiant, yeah, and then he is a tribal warrior running away for his life, just constantly
the whole time.
And then you have your sight gags of an old man putting his hand on the screen to see who he was, and he's a little girl with a balloon looking for her doggy, and then an older lady puts it on, and then she's a sumo wrestler, so But and one of the aspects I loved it too, and he played it perfectly, is one of the things Rip Torn says at the beginning when he's introducing him to the afterlife is, we have the best food you will ever eat. Eat as much as you want. You'll never get full.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he cut to him and Meryl Streep at the restaurant talking about their day. And the waiter comes and goes, do you want me to pack up that for you? No. Well, are you going to need dessert? No. You'll want some pie. I'll pack you some pies. I don't want pie. And then he comes out with 19 boxes of pie.
He comes out a pie for every day he's going to be there. So the more days you're there, everyone looks like, like if you're there for 2 days, right?
Yeah.
It's, hey, you're here for 2 days. I'm here for 10 days. 10 days. And it never explains it, but the more days. James, have you ever seen Defending Your Life?
No, but it sounds like one that I'm going to talk about that I really enjoy. So it sounds like it's very similar in vein to one I will talk about later.
Yeah, the three movies that I want to mention that they're all about, I guess, overcoming fear, and trying to live your life to the most, and that's all of our problems, right? I mean, should I do this? Should I hold out? And there's even a scene in the movie about him. He's talking himself up with his ex-wife. I'm going to hold out for $65,000. I want to hold out for $65,000. I want to hold out for $65,000. Cut to them. We're going to give you $49,000. I'll take it.
Yeah. And then he's afraid to invest in I think Casio. I want to say Casio. I can't remember. And he passes on that because he goes, the Swiss have the best watches. Why would I do that? I'm not going to do that. And then it becomes the biggest stock. And they go, well, what did you invest in? Cows.
Say what you will, Chad. They're still around today.
That's true. And I don't have a Casio, but Chad.
Well, and then, they go, and they go, well, what happened to the cows you invest? They died.
I ate them. It was a great investment. Finally, the sandwich heavy portfolio
pays off.
And to our
For
listening
the 4
audience,
people that get that,
if you haven't seen Defending Your Life, do yourself a treat, and just hope that maybe this is the afterlife. But I hope to God when I die, I'm not one of the hundreds. I probably am.
Well,
Give or
it's
take.
not for everyone's
I
taste.
mean,
There's some obscure jokes. It's still Albert Brooks humor. There's going to be a lot of talking. It if you have to, if Die Hard, and I love Die Hard. Let me think of another one. If Gone in 60 Seconds is a little slow for you, probably not defending your life.
Yeah.
But if you're like me and can like Gone in 60 Seconds and then watch The Seventh Seal on the same day, give it a
I was
shot.
going to save my dinner with Andre, but sure.
So,
I love Seventh Seal.
So James, what movie are you going to talk? What
Well,
movie do you want to
wanna
talk about that's similar to Defending Your Life? Because I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
Well, I want to. I guess I can jump ahead to that one because
because there's no order. It's supposed to be a conversation. People are
okay,
supposed
fine,
to enjoy our
fine. Because I was thinking about Soul, and I was like, Soul has some interesting scenes in it.
Not
And
Soul
since
Man though, right? I'm gonna do this joke as many times as I can get it in.
I'm gonna be
Let's get Thomas Howell
110%.
on here and ask him about it.
I'm gonna be 110% honest. I don't know if I've ever seen all of Soul.
I have seen it.
I have seen
I
it.
don't think I have. I think that's one where even my parents looked at it and be like, "Why would we waste our time with this?"
Even
Sorry, Steve
before,
Thomas.
even before it's getting called out for the racism that it is. Even then, I'm like, ooh.
I don't remember doing that, but I saw it as a kid, probably when it came out on the satellite and HBO. Doesn't James Earl Jones play his professor?
I want to say that's true. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it. I
We'll
didn't see. Last time I saw it was a teenager, so I was a little more woke.
We'll get Jimmy Earl in here and ask him. James.
So I want to. So this one of the things that struck me about Soul Man that I liked, and I think we even talked about
Soul Man.
Screw you, Chad. Soul.
Say Soul Man.
Soul. One of the things that I liked about Soul, and I think
Don't
we
say
talked
that
about
liked me about Soul.
was the listen. I'm flustered. But was the escalator,
Man gets
right?
one cancer scrape.
the escalator.
Knock on wood. Anyway, no. So the escalator part,
Yeah.
and I was thinking I've seen that trope somewhere before, and it dawned on me where I saw it, and sure enough, there's a criterion of this. I recommend everybody check it out. It's non-Rex Harrison British people, and that in Rex Harrison, it's not that anyway. That joke fell flat. Anyway, David Niven. David Niven and Kim Hunter in A Matter of Life and Death, which when they brought it to America, they retitled Stairway to Heaven. It's since been re-released under its original title.
I've never seen it.
But it was directed.
Neither have I.
It was directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger.
I know who Michael
And
Powell
Kim
is.
Hunter. Kim Hunter was actually put in the movie because it was made in 1946, and they wanted a movie that would celebrate an American and a English man. And so Alfred Hitchcock said, "Oh, I'm doing this movie. This actress Kim Hunter, I think she is the all-American girl. You should totally put her in your movie." And they met her, and they said that is the all-American girl that we want for this type of film. So, A Matter of Life and Death. David Niven plays a fighter pilot, and their plane, their transport is shot, and he gets everybody off, but they do not have. They have enough equipment, but he's got a parachute, but he's getting everybody off. It's going to crash. They're all going to die. He gets everybody off. And at the end, his parachute, I think, is damaged, but he's like, well, I'm not going to burn up. I'm going to risk it. He jumps out of the plane, and then he wakes up on a beach. And, it starts with this really high tension scene, but it's a romantic comedy at heart. It turns out that he got lost. Heaven lost him in the fog, and they forgot to take him.
And then he came back and hurt Adrian Barbeau.
And then he goes on trial. He's told this person comes to him, goes, listen, Heaven's found you. And he goes, well, you can't take me now, because right before he jumps, he's on the radio and he talks to Kim Hunter's character. And he says, listen, I've got everybody off, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to make it. And she goes, listen, if you can make it, do make it. That's another reason he decides to jump and risk it, saying, well, at least I won't burn, is because he hears his voice on the radio and he decides if he does make it, that's the person he's going to fall in love with. He just sets it up in his mind. He then has to basically go on trial, because when heaven, or when the celestial court finds him, they say, no, listen, we missed you, but you were supposed to die. You've got to come with us. And he goes, no, I'm in love now. You can't stop my love. Why did you let me have this and then take it from me? and they're going to put him. And what's interesting about it's a Technicolor film, but anytime he's going to heaven or going to the celestial court that will hear his case, it goes to black and white, because heaven is black and white. There's good, there's bad, there's right, there's wrong. Earth is always Technicolor, and loudly Technicolor. And it is always an escalator. Heaven is always an escalator. It's always this thing going up and up and up and up. And when he's going up, at one of the best scenes in it is David Niven's character is there, and he has kind of this guide, angel, whatever you want to call it. And they're like, oh, well, you get to pick a defender. One of the great minds of time will take your side. You have to pick somebody from Earth. You have to pick a human, but anybody throughout history. And the person that's guiding him goes, oh, how about Socrates? And he goes, what would Socrates know of modern love? He argues theory and he doesn't understand modern emotion. And doesn't Socrates say in one of his works that you've got to look past love? And he goes, I don't want to look past love. I want to experience love. And Lincoln's an option. He goes, well, Lincoln had other stuff going on. He doesn't need to defend me. He doesn't need to. And so that's what the movie's all about.
It sounds like you're describing the plot to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure right now.
Isn't that Bogus Journey?
No, Socrates and Abraham Lincoln are in the first one.
Well, yeah, that's true. Okay, fine. But there's Muhammad.
Amalgamation. They had to restruct it into 2 Bill and Ted films to retell the David Niven story of I've done already forgot.
Stairway to
But
Heaven.
anyway, so there's a criterion of this, but I'll just read a little bit of the summary. Peter Carter, who's
that wasn't the fucking summary,
is resigned to his fate.
Jeez,
but with the desperate passion of a man determined to embrace every last sensation in the final seconds of his life. And so it's all about him going to find the love of his. No, tell
is
me
this
more
Michael Keaton's My Life?
Tell me more about Michael Keaton doesn't go to heaven, does he? I don't know. I didn't watch.
Well, it's My Life as he's dying.
Well, no,
I know
he goes and lives on a nice fucking model.
I just got the joke. For a split second, I was thinking, which model is he fucking?
But no, if you've never seen it, there's a Criterion edition of it out. It's $27 if you want the Blu-ray. What's interesting about it is, guess who introduces this film on the Criterion edition?
Alec Guinness.
No, it's this young upstart named Scorsese.
Never heard
of him.
So and of course it's a Criterion Blu-ray. If you get the Blu-ray, it's got tons of features that talks about how important this was. And this film was actually heralded as an important film for keeping British and American filmmakers working in unison in 1946 as we evolved that artistic partnership, which would continue on for quite some time. So if you've never seen A Matter of Life and Death, check it out.
I feel like I have now.
Yeah. Maybe we should.
You all spent more time. I checked the tape. I'm pretty sure you all spent more time on. Let me tell you about what Albert Brooks did. Let me tell you about Albert Brooks eating pie.
Well, let's spend another.
Yeah, that is a scene in the movie.
Yeah. So
spent 5 minutes on pie eating.
But see, they brought him a pie for every day, James.
David, and they were different flavors based on the colors on the box.
Hey, here, if you're higher the IQ, the more your sensitivity is to taste. And so the shit that Rip Torn eats, Albert Brooks thinks tastes like shit.
Like dog shit, yeah. So let's move on to, Joe.
Well, I know if this is my afterlife, which way I went. I repent.
Oh.
So let's talk about what probably the movie that I think most beautifully displays the afterlife. The What Dreams May Come, starring Robin Williams.
Written based on the novel by Richard Matheson.
See, I didn't know that was a Richard Matheson book.
It's a Richard Matheson novel, and I'm almost positive. I will tell you a story about that once you tell us what it's about.
So, Robin Williams is a doctor who is in a terrible accident. He wakes up, and he's essentially in his own personal heaven, is basically what it is.
Yes, Patrick wakes up in heaven.
Yeah, and it's basically kind of like a way station for him to get used to being dead before he moves on to the afterlife or to be reincarnated. And it is so beautifully. It is one of the most beautiful films I think I've ever seen, in my honest opinion. But he constructs his heaven to look like one of his wife's paintings. And in fact, all the grounds paint, the flowers he picks up are paint. And it's just him coming to grasp with the decisions he made in life, because he has to, deal with the fact that he may not have been the best father. He tried his best. He may not have been the best husband. He tried his best there. And it's all about him trying to come to terms with these items. And then, he also finds out, that there's other things that are going on that he needs to take care of while he's there. It is a very beautiful, emotional film, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about it, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's pretty. Chad's being very vague in case you watch, because the more you tell about it, the more you give away the plot.
Yeah, I don't want to give a lot away about it if you haven't seen
you
it.
figure it out as it go. That what I was going to say.
And I feel like this is one of those Robin Williams films that kind of has been.
I don't think people remember it now.
Yeah.
Richard Matheson didn't care for it.
But he also, I think it was hard for the movie to live up to the book, because I don't know if you know anything he said about his book.
Mm-mm.
But he actually said that he viewed What Dreams May Come as the most important book that he wrote.
Yeah.
And here, let me do the quote. I think What Dreams May Come is the most important, read as effective book I've written. It has caused a number of readers to lose their fear of death, which is the finest tribute any writer could ask for.
Yeah. He was not a fan of the movie. I don't think he liked the adaptation or the way they went with it. Now, I've read a lot of Matheson. I've said this on the show before. Matheson has written two of my favorite novels of all time, I Am Legend and Hell House. And I say Hell House is a more effective haunted house book than Shirley Jackson's The Haunting. I prefer it over The Haunting. I know I'm the guy.
But it is not as good.
That prefers The Money Pit over the golf. Well, in the kind of only Money Pit.
It is not as good a lottery book, though, as Shirley Jackson's The Lottery Story.
No, that's actually my favorite Shirley Jackson story is A Lottery. But I always think of the Squidbillies one change. Fuck you, Jimmy.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny when I get Soul Man distracted, but you
it's got a good cast. It's got Robin Williams, and I'm sitting here thinking about Suicide Chad and all that because it plays part of the movie too.
Yeah.
And in the plot of it, life's tough. And that's another one of those where he's going through everything he did and didn't do.
Right. There was a lot of problems with his son that he didn't actually handle that well. And, sometimes I look at that too. And I do think of that movie sometimes when I'm thinking about my interactions with my kids. It's one of those instances where movies I actually try to put it in my head of going, right. I don't want to do that to my kids.
What helped me with that was Fred Rogers, the actual Tom Hanks movie with that. Actually,
I need to watch that. I haven't seen
it. It was really good, and at the end of it, I was like, there was no reason for me not to have more patience.
Yeah.
There's totally reasons. I mean, they may not always be good and appropriate, but in the grand scheme of things,
for him, James, I have no fucking patience for anyone else. But for him, I need to try to have more and more. So it is.
But now, flip side of that, and I'm not devil's advocating Fred Rogers here, but at some point, don't you also have to prepare him that people aren't going to have patience, that it is possible to have a bad day? Because that's something I talk to my kids about. Like, I may snap at you. It doesn't mean I love you. It means something has happened. I need 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes.
Yeah, he's not there yet. But yes, you're right.
I mean, because I also have to prepare them for when, they walk in and their boss is having a bad day and snaps at them. I don't want them to retreat from the world saying, my boss hates me now. No, you may have caught them at a bad time. They may, and you may get fired. It's happened to me.
But
you're jealous of my good look.
What Dreams May Come is one
sad.
of the prettiest movies. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in several years, but the imagery is ingrained in my head of that movie. And it's directed, the guy who directed it, Vincent Ward, he's only did he wrote Aliens 3.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's done a few things, but nothing on the level that was What Dreams May Come. And I just, where did that imagery come from? I mean, it all, in terms of movies about the afterlife and heaven, that's kind of where I hope, it's like, if that would be the way it actually is, I'd be okay with it.
Well, obviously, I mean, Matheson pulled, and I know we're talking about the movie, but Matheson himself pulled a lot from classical literature, which I'm going to talk about in a second, from things like
Hack.
Now,
who, Matheson or Dante?
You can call me whatever you like, but next one,
And we have.
SOBs calls me daddy. I'm gonna
Call
get
me
hard on.
father. You can call me.
So keep going on. Yeah,
Um,
don't, Dick, Matt, you leave Richard alone.
um, but he pulled from, and as a matter of fact, actually, the book has been recognized by some Hindus as being representative. And of course, he said, no, it's not. It pulls from, matter of fact, Matheson said by the end of writing the book, he had his own religion, effectively. He didn't obviously have other people join him in it. He didn't get that tax write off.
I'm curious about that too. You just made it up, right? You just pulled all that into it, and then you like it so well that you decide that's your religion. I'm not saying he did that, but I know
Well,
people who have done it.
Well, but I think the flip side of that is, like, I've always had the philosophy as we talk about the afterlife is that I honestly thought and I'm going to offend people here, and I'm sorry, but hopefully you're in one of those religions that believe in forgiveness. But I often think about, this idea. I'm getting a pop-up page. So anyway, this idea of if any religion was 100% right, like without flaw, this is, for lack of a better term, one true religion, right? If that existed, wouldn't you be able to sort of tell? Like, wouldn't you be like, everybody over there is nice to me, they're good, they're decent, I've never found that.
No, I don't know. The only place I've ever been where everybody was nice was Canada. So should I worship Canada?
No, those are false idols. Bye, Canadian viewers. No, I'm
only half-heartedly joking.
Well, no, and
one asshole the whole time.
And the flip side of all of that is, it's Greg. Sorry, everybody got the text on once.
Well, I forgot to move it off the damn table.
Everybody, because that's something that I think about often, and I also think that a lot of religious texts have been edited over the years and translated, and there's those people that argue that if you actually study the ancient Hebrew and Aramaic and Latin and all of that stuff, that, for instance, thou shalt not kill actually is not what it says. Thou shalt not murder. Murder is different than kill, and people have these debates. So I kind of get it. I kind of applaud Matheson. They did try to take all these different religious views and say, what does hold true? What does help me identify? So I give him some credit. But
I like the movie. I just always thought it was interesting because I've never taken the time to read the book and see. I wonder what it is that bothered him about it, and I don't remember the specifics.
I bet one thing that bothered him was the size of his cut. It's what always
bothered me about it. Yeah. All right, James, you got you got another movie?
Let's talk about I want to talk about what the origin, so to speak, of our views of the afterlife. And what I mean by that is, I sit down with my kids.
Philosophical hobo jobo, are you?
No, I sit down with my kids and we watch Looney Tunes. And I don't know, Bugs Bunny.
So far, you've got me.
Yeah, I'm in tight.
Hold on to that meme, Rick and Morty. You son of a bitch, I'm in. Whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that's or the Leonardo DiCaprio from Django. Earlier you had my interest. Now you have my attention. No, I sit down and watch that, and I'll actually do Tweety Bird and Sylvester. Right, Tweety Bird does something. Sylvester ends up falling to his death. At the end of the episode, it's him, balloon tied to him with a harp, going to heaven. Right, it's everywhere. Where does that come from? So I thought, since I use these things other than just as coasters, not this one in particular. This is
for you folks out there listening. He uses condoms as coasters.
It's a book.
Whole handful of rubbers right now.
So I wanted to take just a second and say,
like he needs the Magnum, please. Oh,
no, it's the Altar.
Is that the novelization of Soul Man?
No, this actually, this is a book I got today.
I now know why he demands lambskin.
Since you asked, Chad, this is a book I got today. It's I never thought I'd own a copy of it. This book has nothing to do with our topic today, but it's called Sex and Education, and it's one of the most important books.
You say sexy education?
Sex and education.
I never got
it. I never got any sex education either. So I'd like to have some sexy education.
This is one of the most important
chance for girls. Yeah.
This is one of the
jokes.
This is one of the most important books.
The radio.
This is one of the most important books that affected higher education in the 19th and 20th,
Are
early
you going to
20th
tell us
century.
your story?
And the reason it was the book that said if women go to college, they'll be barren. It's important historical.
Barren.
Yeah, that women, if they get educated, it will actually do them. They won't be able to have children. I'm not making
Chad?
that up. That's the truth.
Oh, I thought it was they'd make pizzas.
No. Chad, say the line. The Raising Arizona line. No one. Hi, I'm barren. I can't do it like Holly Hunter. If I could,
Okay.
Anyway,
I'd be Holly Hunter.
so that had nothing to do with anything. But since Chad asked, that's what that book is. I got
Put
it
your
today. It's a
condoms
historical
back
article.
down,
Anyway, but I want to talk. Before there were TV looky boxes, before we had film, there were books. And so a couple of things I want to bring up. There's our literary view, or our literary writings have informed everything from Looney Tunes to what we see now, even in films. And it goes back to actually BC, those images. I've never actually heard this pronounced, so I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce it, but I'm going to try anyway. The Aeneid by Virgil. That was published. Virgil died in 19 BC. However, his writings about the afterlife are still effective. Matter of fact, if you like the film Gladiator, what it keeps showing Russell Crowe walking through, that is inspired by the Aeneid by Virgil.
Went
Virgil,
on to be the $1 Million Man.
Are you saying the Aeneid?
Thank you, Aeneid. Thank you. I've never.
Holy fuck! One of us has a
PhD.
PhD. I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, is he trying to say
Not
the Aeneid?
in literature? I was told not
Help
to
me
get
out here,
in
Chad.
Anyway, Aeneid,
I thought he was talking about the Iliad, and I was going to go, that
No.
Virgil didn't write that.
No, I know what the
No.
Iliad is. Anyway,
No. Matheson wrote that.
And Virgil
anyway,
went on to get thrown out of Royal Rumble by Yokozuna.
There you
anyway,
go.
if you know anything about the Greeks and Romans and people that would have inspired Virgil, Virgil couldn't write about heaven in the way we see it as an up there, because gods were the only ones allowed up there, and dead souls didn't get to go there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They went somewhere else. And if you were a good person, you went to a Matt Damon movie, Elysium.
Okay.
And Elysium was, here's the description of Elysium. It was where the heroic dead would have a grassy gymnasium where some, and this is a direct quote, compete in sports and wrestle on yellow sand, while others can tread out the steps of a dance or sing songs. In other words, there was no more toiling. You got to do what you wanted to do.
There was no more toilet?
Toiling.
Toileting. You did not no longer have to poop.
That would be hell, I think.
Well, you don't have to, Chad. So defending your life, you can eat all 10 of those pies and not have to poop. That was the brilliance of Albert Brooks.
But where do you get your me time?
Anyway.
I thought he said meat time for a second.
Well, they'd be in the meat pies, Chad.
Where else do you eat your prime rib?
They'd be in the meat pies. Meat pies, Chad.
Anyway, thought of that, but yeah, it is.
We jump forward a little bit into into the book that inspired Matheson and several other people. There's even a video game called Dante's Inferno. But the Inferno is the one everybody talks about. But Dante Alighieri also wrote Paradiso, and so in the Inferno he goes through hell and purgatory. Eventually, he is guided by Beatrice into seeing the abode of the angels. He gets to see heaven. And here is how he describes heaven. Heaven has a light flowing like a river. So it's a soft light, but it's everywhere.
And then he met up with Rose and Blanche.
Glowing with amber waves between two banks. So there's banks. So the river constantly flows and you're part of it. Brilliantly painted by spellbinding spring. That's the description of heaven. Still not what we see in Looney Tunes. Let's jump a little bit forward. So there's this other hack that comes along after Dante and says, I think I can describe heaven. And that would be Geoffrey Chaucer. And it is not part of the thing most people know Chaucer for. It's not part of those Canterbury's tales. It's, and I'm going to mispronounce this because, again, I've only read it. I've never actually had it pronounced to me. Troilus and Criseyde. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Again, sorry, people. I read them. I don't hear them pronounced. But This is the story of a requited love, not an unrequited love, and the agony of that love eventually betraying you. Troilus becomes a kamikaze warrior. And of course, what happens to kamikaze warriors? They die. And
What?
when he dies, he gets to ascend to what is referred to as the Platonic heaven, Plato's heaven. And what is Plato's heaven? Well, what is Plato? You know, when you think about Socrates, Socratic questioning that Plato taught, what does
Where you
that
don't
mean?
get any
Platonic.
Get it?
Yeah, I got it. I got it. I wish I didn't. Platonic heaven.
He's
in
just
the
trying to
words
break some of this
Chaucer,
up, James. Keep going.
Platonic is where we do start to see some overlap to how heaven's been portrayed in TVs and film and all that stuff. If you've watched something where it shows heaven, where they, spend their afterlife watching over us, that's Platonic heaven. You have to observe. And so Troilus has to spend the rest of his life observing what is going on Earth. And he thinks it's hilarious, right? Because he says it's once you're in heaven and you're just looking down, it's all minor. It's who cares? It's all it's piddly stuff. It's nothing. Jump forward a little bit more. We get to Paradise Lost by John Milton. John Milton, 1608 to 1674. So we're in the 17th century now. So we know in Paradise Lost, the fallen angels are, in misery, right?
They had GPS. That wouldn't be a problem now.
Where is God? Well, God, and let me quote this directly, is the pure Empyrean, where while ambrosial fragrance filled all heaven, Milton imagines this as a place of music where, and this is where it starts to get direct into our modern cartoon versions, blessed voices sing, and there is constant uttering joy. The angels twang their harps with preamble sweet of a charming heavenly symphony. Harp and all that stuff, blame Paradise Lost and John Milton. There's some other sources as well. He borrowed from some other sources as well. A contemporary of him, John Bunyan, who wrote Pilgrim's Progress, which I don't recommend you read because I'm not a big fan of Pilgrim's Progress, but also defines heaven. Heaven has streets that are paved with gold, and there are, again, the populace is filled with harps and constantly sing praises. And by the way, guys, would you honestly want to live if it was like you're trying 4:00 in the morning, there's just an angel outside going, everything's great, guys. Listen to this. I'm going to strum for about 400 more years.
I would literally get a pellet gun.
Are you talking about now or heaven?
Either or.
I'm trying to give you all the historic background. The Flesh and the Spirit.
I read the Bible. That's the only damn book I need to read.
Hey, you read the translation that was edited.
I read the Cliff Notes.
Actually, hold on.
Pretty sure it was the Cliff Notes of Beloved, but I guess the gist.
No. You read the Chevy Maintenance Bible.
No, he stole the one out of the hotel that only had 5 pages left in it.
True story. I've got 5 Gideon Bibles over here, the New Testament, when I was going through stuff, trying to get rid of them over Christmas break. And where they've just handed them over to me on campus over the years. And I don't want to be rude to these old men giving out Gideon Bibles. And there's a stack of them over there. And I went to throw the boy, and it was 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. It was just Christy and I down here. And I go, should I? And she goes, I don't know. And I go, I can't. Whatever Baptist is left in me, I couldn't do it. They're sitting right over here.
How many of those do you think end up at Goodwill every year? I would have to imagine a ton through the donation when you drive and drop off the donation and drive away.
I have no idea.
Has to be a lot. Anyway, a couple other historical ones. I want to give some credit to some women authors who defined heaven. Anne Bradstreet. Anne Bradstreet, writing in between 1612 and 1672, so we're still in the 17th century, wrote The Flesh and the Spirit. And The Flesh and the Spirit is actually a debate between flesh and spirit. And flesh is trying to convince spirit about how great being alive is. It's a very, especially for the 17th century, it's a very, very interesting work. And so, flesh is like, but we have food, we have all this stuff. And it made me again think of soul, where you don't, nothing taste, you can't feel, you can't do anything. This is the book that has that debate in the 17th century. And finally, Spirit's answer is, but you haven't seen heaven. If you see heaven, and again, here's the description of heaven from Anne Bradstreet. The stately walls, both high and strong, are made of precious jasper stone. There are gates of pearl, some pearly gates, and streets of transparent gold, and a crystal river. One other example, we'll get to the 19th century, and I'll get ready to wrap this up after just 18 more. No, I got 3 more to do the 18th and the 19th and 20th century. Emily Dickinson wrote a poem called "I Went to Heaven." It is actually considered one of her more eccentric works, and if you know anything about Emily Dickinson, that's something to be said, because she is not overly impressed with heaven in her own view. Here's her quote from her work, "I Went to Heaven." "'Twas a small town lit with a ruby,
That makes no sense.
lathed with down, stiller than the fields at the full dew." I'll jump ahead a little bit. The inhabitants had, quote, "duties of Gossamer and eider names." And finally, she says,
what does a Gossamer duty smell like? I wonder.
Oh my God. Anyway,
it went through me like a Gossamer goose. I went to say Christmas Gossamer. The Gossamer goose came out of it.
I mean, a Gossamer goose would come out of you.
I think my Metamucil had shards of glass in it. Damn.
Gossamer goose.
So
Your Gossamer goose is cooked.
Emily Dickinson, though, actually ends her poem almost was saying that
holy shit, James.
She still doesn't want to go. So Emily Dickinson, in her own way, was the Hank Williams Jr. of her time. Because if heaven ain't a lot, anyway, because she said she would be almost contented to view such unique society.
Well, that's okay. She was one of those damn women livers. She's burned it in hell. Move on.
So we get
joke, people. That's a joke. Before I start getting hate mail, it's a joke.
I would like somebody watching this show. Anyway, so the bridge to the 19th and 20th century.
They tuned out about the 15th century.
He was born. I'm trying to give you all the scope of where our views of heaven come from.
I love listening.
I can't believe.
I
can't believe. So I want to bring this up though because it is a favorite of so many people. At least the first book. I don't know how many people have read them all, so I want to bring up C.S. Lewis.
Yes,
wrote
him and his Jesus line.
The Jesus allegory line. That's a weird thing to say in front of the Jesus allegory line, but yeah, I saw it. Anyway, I don't know if anybody's read The Last Battle, which is the end of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series.
I have not.
Novels. So the kids in that you find out by the end of the book that they died in the train crash that happens at the beginning of that book. So spoiler, Bruce Willis is dead the whole time. They have been dead the entire book, and once they realize that, they have actually been traveling into heaven in that particular book, and that's why it's called The Last Battle. They are at peace now. And here's the way heaven is described there. Here's how C.S. Lewis envisioned heaven for that series. There were forests and green slopes and sweet orchards and flashing waterfalls, one above the other, going on forever. The holidays have begun.
That's not a very good descriptor. No, writer.
I know. Well, you know what?
Get more time on Jesus line.
You know what you should do is send a letter to his estate and let.
I should have sent a letter to him. What does anybody have the address to oblivion?
God. Can you imagine, by the way?
I've got a burrito to eat. I got to get one of these Gossamer duties. I got to do some scientific research.
Did you say you had some burrito meat?
Yes.
Can you imagine, by the way?
Burrito meat, my babe.
Can you imagine? Now I'm just picturing. Can you imagine C.S. Lewis dies and he gets to heaven and, St. Peter's sitting there with the book going, "This is not what this is at all." No, sir. Anyway. The last one I wanted to mention.
Only no. This is the third time you said the last one.
No.
And by the way, no. Then St. Peter goes,
"Hold
on, I got a Gossamer log coming."
This is the last one because this description to me is hell. But I want to bring it up because some people really like this description. The Lovely Bones, which was made into a movie, but the book describes heaven this way. And if you know anything about the book, she that your protagonist was raped and murdered beginning of the book, and obviously is dead and telling the story from death. Here's how heaven is described in that book. It's like high school, but without any compulsory lessons except for art. Nothing about high school screams heaven to me. So this book is not for me.
Peter Jackson did a better job than that description.
So I wanted
That's
to.
got a
Well,
lot
Fran
of-
Walsh
that's
rewrote that, right? I mean, she
Yeah,
did this.
and Fran Walsh in his other Philip. Shit.
Philippa Gregory writes them Queen novels.
No. The
Oliver Queen was the Green Arrow.
but you know, guys,
Still
that
is,
was on.
bitch.
If you look up Heaven movies, and I think it's simply because that Lovely Bones, Heaven Can Wait with what's his face, which is actually
Warren Beatty.
with Warren Beatty, is on a lot of lists, and I keep thinking, well, it's just because there's probably not a ton of movies.
Yeah, and there's two that I want to talk about that, it doesn't
We don't have
necessarily-
time. Thank you all so much. We spent
Yeah.
14 hours on the 6th century. We'll see you all next week.
No, I was just
Gutenberg hadn't even invented it.
Oh
No,
my God! I tried to add something to this, so we're
They
not
had
talking
to
about
handwrite
movies.
those books out because there wasn't a printing.
Yeah,
press.
actually,
But
that's
there's
true.
two movies that
The early
where
ones.
it's technically not heaven, it's still the afterlife, but in order for them to move on to heaven, they have to complete something on earth. So that kind of falls into the afterlife, and two movies is that I think do a great job of that. James,
Chad, are you saying, for what it's worth, ooh baby, heaven is a place on earth? They say in heaven, loves come first, but you made.
I was hoping
heaven-
he'd do Buffalo
It's on
Springfield for what it's worth.
No, I'm sorry, I was doing. Who sings that? Who am I?
Linda
quoting?
Carlisle.
Yeah. So
All right,
Chad,
good.
you were speaking eloquently.
Yeah,
See,
was,
you made me call him eloquent.
and we all know that's never the case. If you've
I
listened
tried
to
to
this
do
podcast,
I try to bring in something other than movies so we can keep our pop culture.
well, I'm
title.
going to bring up TV, but I don't know if we'll have time now.
Keep going with
Oh.
your movies.
But one of the movies that I think is forgotten in Steven Spielberg's arsenal.
Ah, shit. This is the next one I was going to talk about.
Yeah, always.
Well,
Right?
sometimes.
What movie is always forgotten in his arsenal? Chad, tell us.
Sometimes.
Oh, I ain't seen it. Is it as good as always?
Sometimes.
So I really like Always with Richard Dreyfuss and John Goodman and Helen.
So much
Hunt.
better than Ghost.
It is, in my opinion.
I agree. I wasn't being sarcastic. I actually prefer it to Ghost.
And it's also the movie that made me really. Whenever I hear Crazy Love, it honestly puts me in that type of happy place.
Gives you the mahogany.
I have the same feeling because of Coneheads whenever I hear Tainted Love.
Yeah. But if you haven't seen Always, it's plain and simple. Richard Dreyfuss dies, but in order to move on, he has to make sure the love of his life stays happy without him gone.
No, hold on. That's his. Before he moves on, he has to help someone. He has to help the guy that basically replaces him.
You're right. I'm sorry.
The problem is he doesn't want to help him because they're falling in love, and he wants to stop it because that's the love of his life. Dead is dead. Deader than
Joe,
hell.
thank you. I don't know why I just said that out. This is what happens when I don't have notes. Yeah. So
He has to train his own replacement.
So what you're saying is they can't play football and they got to go get some replacements.
Yeah.
Keanu going to come in and help them as well as that British wiry
So
guy.
they're going to have to play Iron Man because they don't have enough for defense and offense, and they're Sinbad, and there may be some necessary roughness.
Oof.
What?
See, I want replacements. You went.
I went both.
Yeah,
That's
Joe
true.
merged them in a very
Yeah.
hacky neat way.
Oh, hacky had to tell you.
Hey,
what
Gossamer
always.
duties. Nothing is going to beat Gossamer duties.
I think that's the name of this episode, right?
I can never remember.
I don't even know how to spell it.
I don't either. Duties. I think it's SHIT. Chad.
And then the other one, this is the movie, and then the movie that made me.
Now we know why Joe's teach your kid to read books always fail.
No, and the other movie. This is
Your
the movie.
mom
Where,
is spelled H-O. Sorry, Chad.
but no, the movie that
shit.
made me really love Robert Downey Jr. Heart and Souls.
Okay.
I really like that movie simply because it has a great ensemble cast, bar none. But Robert Downey Jr. portraying, and if you haven't seen Heart and Souls, it's one of those obscure. I feel like it's obscure.
I don't think anybody's seen it.
It's
Yeah,
no heartbeats.
essentially four people die on a bus, and their souls are transported to this baby who grows up to be Robert Downey Jr. and they're stuck with him wherever he goes for eternity until they figure it. Well, not eternity for as long as Robert, but until they complete the one thing missing in their life, so they can move on to heaven. It's a really great movie, in my opinion. I really do love it. And seeing they take over Robert Downey Jr.'s body to complete these tasks, and seeing him portray each one of these actors, you see his range and why he is so successful despite all of his horrible past of drugs and insanity. But no, I mean, I've always liked those types of movies where these souls are stuck on Earth, and they have to complete some kind of task before they move on to heaven. And when we're talking
Hold
about
on,
the
real
after,
quick, Chad loves mission movies in heaven. So basically, we're going to pitch it next week to Warner Brothers. You've seen Heaven, and you've now seen The Dirty Dozen. We're doing The Dirty Dozen Goes to Heaven.
Oh my God, no, that's actually a great
They've
idea.
got to
See, here's-
complete this mission before they can get into heaven, and if not, it's right back.
and the good news
down.
is everybody from that cast is already there.
Already there.
We just got to get out our Ouija board and we're good.
That's right. If they want out of hell, they've got to complete one last mission to get to heaven.
Is there anybody left that's alive from the Dirty Dozen? I don't think so.
Jim Brown.
Jim Brown. Ah,
what a great movie.
but no, I just wanted to briefly mention those because I like those movies, and I think those are two of the key examples of that type of subgenre of movies.
Well, I think most movies don't really deal with actually what's going on in heaven. It's such just a quasi. What could that be? How do you visually tell that? It's like always real quick before we go on to it. It's a remake. It's a remake of a Guy Named Joe, directed by Victor Fleming. By the way, written by Dalton Trumbo. For everybody out there,
Did not know that was Dalton Trumbo.
Dalton Trumbo is one of the writers. I think he's the last screenwriter of it. It always is not one of my favorite Spielberg films. I liked it as a kid. I prefer When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes as far as songs, Chad, when you were talking earlier.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My dad liked that song just anyway.
I love that song, and when I think of that movie, I think of Audrey Hepburn, that song, and that it's actually one of Spielberg's. It's not one of my favorite, but it's one of Spielberg's prettiest films.
I agree with you. It's pretty.
And here's a little interesting fact about this, because I was going to talk about Always. It actually came out. You could only get it letterboxed and videotape. I don't know if you all knew that. Spielberg demanded that it would only come out letterboxed. So because he refused to have what he had shot go do pan and scan like they'd done on all of his other films, like they did on most all movies.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that is, we could do a whole episode between pan and scan and letterbox. And the other interesting thing is that's the movie when they were doing the table read, he walked in and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I found my Fred Flintstone."
John Goodman?
John Goodman.
Oh.
Found out later, John Goodman never wanted to play Fred Flintstone. Tried to get out of it right before they were shooting and got yelled at when it did the movie, and enjoyed Spielberg, liked Spielberg, and then in the end just did not want to piss him off because he was Spielberg and ended up doing it. He never wanted to be Fred Flintstone.
Oh, that's interesting. Honestly, I couldn't envision anybody being Fred Flintstone other than John
Spielberg's right. I found my Fred Flintstone. There he is. But A Guy Named Joe with Spencer Tracy. Check it out if you like Always. What's better? That Always is prettier. And I like Richard Dreyfuss, but he's no Spencer Tracy.
No.
Makes sense, guys?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So Spencer Tracy is much more watchable in that role. Sorry.
Go ahead. As we talk about depictions of heaven and the afterlife, I think one thing that we probably do need to acknowledge in this conversation is depictions of God that films have done or that television have done.
I want to do one on TV. Yeah.
Go.
And the one that comes to mind, there's a couple that comes to mind for me, and two of them that I really do like quite a bit are
James,
from.
James's smile makes him think he's going to pick the one that I'm thinking of. So go ahead, James.
I was going to talk about Matt Groening's versions of God.
Exactly.
I love in Simpsons. You know how you can always tell if it's God is God always has 5 fingers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every time God's anime. But even more important or funnier to me, because
Yep.
one of my favorite lines from The Simpsons is it's literally they're fading to black in the episode, and Homer goes, "Can you just tell me the meaning of life?" "Well, I'll tell you when you're dead." "I can't wait that long." "You can't wait 5 months?" It's a throwaway line, but I laugh every time. And then I love God in Disenchantment. I love the entire parallel of if you've not seen it, there's a character voiced by Billy West, Elfo, who has to get thrown out of heaven. And there's an entire scene where he gets a golden calf and he's like, "You've got to kick me out now. I've got this idol." "Well, technically I'm God. I'm in all things. So technically I'm in the golden calf. So you're still worshiping me." "Well, I'm going to have sex with it." "Yeah, sure. Go ahead. If that makes you happy, this is heaven." And the only thing that eventually gets him kicked out is he makes fun of somebody that God likes. And I won't give away the scene. But the way that Matt Groening always plays around, or Matt Groening projects, it's written by tons of people and all that. I don't want to not give credit to the writers, but there's something about the way Matt Groening has played with the religion in The Simpsons. Matter of fact, I think there's an entire book called The Simpsons and Religion. I know for a while, of course, a lot of organized religions were against The Simpsons, and there was kind of this renaissance after it had been on the air about 10 years saying, well, actually, maybe they're not that bad. Maybe what it has to say about religion uniting people. I mean, they go to church, so they do all this stuff. But I think that's one of my favorite portrayals of God
Wow.
in cartoons.
James, I'm going to cut you off because
I figured there's another one that I was going to stop because I thought you might do it. So
yeah, because it's not my favorite. My favorite is from Futurama of God.
Yeah.
Where Bender is in space,
mm-hmm.
floating endlessly, and he runs into a star cluster that's speaking in binary.
Yeah.
Until he goes, "I only know what is Bender say? I speak English. I have a hard time with binary. Do you speak English?" "I do now." But it has one of the best lines of from God when thinking about God. It's the best line ever when talking about him. I'm going to do the whole line, so bear with me. God, Bender, being God isn't easy. If you do too much, people get dependent on you. And if you do nothing, they lose hope. You have to use a light touch, like a safecracker or a pickpocket. Bender, or a guy who burns down a bar for insurance money? And then God goes, "Yes, if you make it look like an electrical thing." But now here's the line. When you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
No, go ahead, finish your point.
No, I'm just saying, if you're thinking of God, that's the problem with God in heaven now, is everybody's looking for something. But I think Futurama puts it in a great... You're not going to... If God exists, it's not going to be in your face. It's going to be through subtle movements. So just enjoy what life is.
And you're both wrong.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, on a lesser extent, by the way, there's also the Family Guy reference. And Family Guy has done thousands of references. And I know Joe has another one, but one of the ones that I love is where somebody goes, "Thank you, God, thank you." And it pans up. And God runs over going, "I didn't do that." And it pans over, I think, and it's Vishnu or somebody. And he goes, "It was me, but you get all the credit anyway." And I'm just, what a perfect commentary that is.
And if we're talking about Family Guy, Joe, we got to do it. We haven't done it in forever. Jesus!
Get the Escalade. And by the way, Chad's right. That's one of the best lines. I actually had forgotten about that. But my favorite, you're both wrong. Which is funny because both of yours are less pessimistic than mine. I think Supernatural handled God the best.
Oh,
God and angels. Angels are dicks, and God's a crap writer.
Yeah. That
a
is
shitty pulp B writer.
Well, and
Trying
that's one of,
to keep things going and making it interesting.
one of the things, and we could do an entire commentary on this because, and I'm sure Chad can come up with 1,000 examples as well. But comic books for a long time, if you go pre-code, they used religion all the time. It wasn't uncommon for the devil or God to create a hero or something like that. And then you got the code, and they got a little bit. Ghost Rider it can be powered by a demon, but it can't be Satan. It can't. And the code has since been relaxed and all of that stuff. But I think religion has been a big part of comics, and one of my favorite examples of that. And if you're a big comic nerd, I recommend checking this out. Fantastic Four issue 511. It's part of five. I think it starts in 509. The Thing is killed, and it's Reed's fault. And they eventually decide they're going to find a way to bring him back. And Fantastic Four could be time travel to, and they end up finding this place where he is. And the story arc is called The Hereafter. The reason issue 511 is so important is they get to this place, and there's this barrier, and there's a wall they can't get through, but they're able to talk to Ben Grimm, the Thing, and say, we will bring you back. And he doesn't want to go back. And the Human Torch, basically, and there's this entire dialogue of I'm at peace, let me be at peace, and all of that stuff. And it's got, but then eventually they kind of break through the barrier. And when they get through the barrier, they think, what are we going to find? And it's a little studio apartment, and there's a little man at a writing desk or at an artist desk. And if you're a comic book fan, you recognize very quickly it's Jack Kirby. And if Jack Kirby, along with Stan Lee, created the entire universe, but there's this great dialogue where they're like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm the creator." And he never says it's God, never says, and there's this back and forth of you're not what we would expect, and he goes, "I'm what you need me to be, or what you expect me to be, or what you." And so I think it's interesting that when we talk about how different things portray that being, your description for Supernatural works. Because Supernatural doesn't work if they do find a God that's like, oh no, let me step in and solve this for you. That's called the end of the show, right? I mean, if you did have that character, if you can go and be like, oh, God was just tied up, it's the same thing with Dogma, right?
Right.
Once they find God, Dogma as a movie is over, effectively. You get a couple more cool scenes, Alanis Morissette pops up, people's heads explode, good times. But I think that's one of the challenges when you do use, have a story arc that involves God or whatever cosmic being you want. It gets really hard to have that moment of what does that look like? How do you do that? And can I bring up one view of heaven that actually haunts me? And I also hope it's not like other than that high school one.
As long as it was in this century.
Well, I mean, technically it's not anymore, but Monty Python's The Meaning of Life.
Well, I wanted to talk about that, but I thought I'd save it for the next one.
What I'm talking about, the Christmas in Heaven. Like that is not, I mean, no offense meant to Eric Idle and John Cleese and those very talented individuals, but I always think about that where it's, it's like lounge music, and it's, and that to me is not, I don't know. I often theorize about what is the, even if you do a strict biblical reading of what heaven is, well, you're not going to have any worries. Well, does that mean I forget things? Like do our souls separate? Do they? It's a fascinating conversation. But I Christmas in Heaven, which is the closing of Meaning of Life, if I remember correctly, it's to me it's a creepy theory more than it is a moment of rest.
Well, as we wrap up, guys, so I hate to, no, I don't hate to, but I think that line from Futurama probably should have been how we wrapped up the show. I mean,
I think
do nothing. If you do it right, it looks like you did nothing at all.
Yeah, and I love that line, and it's still one of my favorite Futurama episodes.
And what I'd like to talk about in the next episode is why is it so much easier for mankind in art to show visually hell? Because we go to hell more in the movies. We talk about hell. We do.
Because as a race, as a culture, as a society, We tend to worry about the darker side versus the brighter side.
But I also think
why is it easier for us to visualize it?
well, and I'll talk about this more in the next episode, because I do think our hell conversation is going to be much better because of exactly what you're talking about.
It couldn't be any worse.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. No, but I think Chad's also right. But I think the other part about it is we all have pain, right? We all have suffering. And I think with that is like a lake of burning fire. I don't care who it is. You throw somebody in fire, they're going to suffer. Happiness is not the same for everybody. There are people that would look at, hypothetically, having children. I know people that never want to have kids. Well, and that's their truth. That may be true for them.
Yeah, I don't
think joy is universal.
Just a little bit, but I think they're both very, very different. And I think they're both different for many, many people. And I think the idea of suffering, you could talk about pain and fire.
Yeah, and you got to think, though, heaven, everything is nice. There's nothing wrong. You can't develop pop culture around that. But hell, pain, suffering, explosions, fire, guy with a pitchfork poking you in the ass.
It may be
demons gnawing on your
sounds like a Sunday night to me.
Demons gnawing on your nipples.
You can't do drama in heaven.
Right, basically, that's what I'm saying.
It's
everything is there. It's happy. You can't do pop culture
even
around
when
that.
Even when we do heaven, they got to defend their life to get there. They got to.
They got to. It's got to be. And even like if you think about it, a lot of heaven is done in comedies, like Little Nicky. I'm trying to think of. I'm blanking. I had 3 right off the top of my head, and I just blanked
the question that we all need to be asking ourselves, though, as we think about heaven, is of course the question that has
South Park was the other one. Yeah, Mormons. We had it right. Ooh,
has haunted man since at least the 1980s, and that is, of course, when we think about heaven and we think about God, we have to ask ourselves, what would God want with the starship?
I knew you were going to fit it in somewhere.
I had to fit it in. I had to.
Going to fit it in somewhere.
But anyway, no. I think, like I said, I think we're going to have a great conversation because, like you were saying, I mean, we could probably do a 10-parter on hell representations.
It's just, I mean, it's not just art. Of course, there are many great artists who have put to canvas what their idea of heaven is, but I don't know. My gut feeling is if you counted it up between that and hell, you're going to get a lot more hell.
And that's true.
Do you think also?
I know you get a lot more hell when it comes to movies.
Oh well, no, I think you're true in art because I mean, if I think it's more visceral. I think it's more.
Well, I think it may just be as simplistic as there's just drama. How do you do drama in heaven? And if you do drama in heaven, it isn't quite heaven anymore.
Well, and that's it. I think that's, and I think again, it
what
goes
Supernatural
back
did effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think as you think about these,
and you guys haven't watched the last season, so there's a lot more to heaven in the last season.
I'm going to get there.
I'm not ruining.
I got stuff going on.
I'm not saying that. I'm going to get there. I'm the fact that I'm 3 seasons behind is gnawing at me.
But do you think it's also because, I mean, even if you want to do the Christian afterlife and you go to the Bible, we get God through a burning bush. And if you get one of the Bibles that has the words of Jesus,
blow the man down.
What?
Three amigos.
Yeah. You get the words of.
This is a talking bush. I guess this is a talking bush. By the way, that 15 minutes in that 10 minutes in that movie is some of the 10 funniest minutes in all of cinema throughout the 80s.
There is no argument.
But the problem is there's only about that 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, no, sir.
There are good lines, but nothing in that movie reaches the height of hilarity. But the invisible swordsman to the singing bush. There's just nothing.
That I will not argue.
There's come anywhere close to anywhere near it. I even love Spies Like Us, and I don't think there's anything in Spies Like Us that comes to you shot the invisible sword. I don't know. It's the most Python-esque too. It's something I would see Monty Python doing that didn't happen on Monty Python. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
But no, I think again, I think that honestly, I'm sitting here when I was prepping for this one, I was like, oh, I can do the classic literature. I can do stuff like that. But honestly, if you tell me, maybe it's the effect of 2020, but there's a lot more hell.
Yeah. I do want to end on and because I think some of our listeners might be yelling at the screen that we haven't talked about it yet. In terms of TV, and I really do consider this a modern classic. I think as we progress forward, this will be one that's remembered. The Good Place. I don't want to tell anybody anything, especially you two, because you haven't seen it yet. On the off chance that you will watch it,
it's on my
is on the eventual 42nd somewhere queue.
The last season does an amazing portrayal of heaven, of kind of what heaven should be in terms of how we view it. And I really think in terms of television, Futurama, best presentation of God. Good Place, the best presentation of heaven, in my opinion. I can't think of any TV source where heaven was portrayed in that manner. So I do want to briefly, before we wrap, give The Good Place a brief nod of, if there is a heaven, I hope that's it.
Because you want to live with Kristen. You want to live with Elsa.
Kristen Bell.
Or is it Anna? She's Anna.
All I know is
Elsa is
the brunette with the voice.
Yeah,
Idina Menzel.
Idina Menzel, yeah, from Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
I was going to say from Years on Broadway, but sure.
Who knows anything about that? But if you've seen those Uncut Gems, all right, guys, we ready to wrap up?
This little slice of heaven is coming to a close.
Next week, we're going to talk about hell.
Oh,
there's a highway to it, supposedly.
But there's also one to heaven. Is it the same road? Does it depend on which way you're going?
I got bad. For some odd reason, we all turned into Jerry Seinfeld. I'm bad with directions. Read the map.
I got to go take a Gossamer dump.
Gossamer.
This is
Can you say Gossamer? See Doss. See Doss run.
He did a Gossamer dump.
That's right. When my poop comes out, it sings.
Gossamer dump. It's some sort of lyrical musical thing.
Yeah, it sings.
Dulcimer.
And it sounds like Barbra Streisand.
This has been Bonehead.